This is weird talking with this on. Yeah.
Does it sound good?
It sounds weird.
Does it sound warm and crispy?
Very crispy. When I was touring, it was like, you have the best job ever. You have the best job ever, right? It's like you hear that a lot. Nobody really talks about how grueling and how hard and how much work it is.
Hello, my fellow Martians. My name is Harry Mars, and this is the On Mars Pod, where we take a deep dive into creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and other inspiring Martians alike. Today, we are joined by Matt Miera, a business owner and former tour manager of EDM DJ Kaskade.
Coachella 2015 was insane. You have to see this. And they showed us this footage, and I'm goosebumps. Can't nail down why I went the way I went.
Hello, my fellow Martians. Today, we are joined by an absolute legend with 10 years of tour experience, a multiple business owner, and a director at Happy Dad, and also a family man. Everybody welcome Matt Miera. Thank you for being here.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. That's an honor. So on Mars, we profile creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and other inspiring Martians alike, you know? So that's why I want to have you on, man. So we've met each other a long time ago, years now, but we rarely have, the ability to get like a one-on-one session. So super stoked for this conversation.
Same.
So to get started here, man, what were growing up, of course, your influences and your inspirations from your family, what was that like growing up?
Oh, starting off with the hard one. I was never really good at paying attention to what I was influenced by or what moved the needle for me, like until later in life, I would say, right? When and it wasn't even looking back at certain things that I'm like, oh, that played a role in this or that played a role in this. I mean, my story and like my journey has been all over the place, right? And I think that influence-wise, kind of just like let it all fall into place, right? And I do think that everything in my life's happened for a reason, and I do think that one thing kind of led to another along the way. But yeah, I guess in thinking about that, I don't know that, I mean, my parents obviously are influential in ways that parents should be influential, right? I mean, they've always taught me to be kind. Kindness is like the one thing that I try to live by always, and so that's played a big role in in my upbringing, in my life, and how I raise my children as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. I don't know exactly. I can't give you like those influential moments in life that I think have taken me where I am today, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I think even just what you said kind of talks a lot about how you grew up and what kind of influences around that you had, because it sounds just based off of what you said there. It's like your family was very value-based morals, kind of teaching you right from wrong. And it sounds like that they were pretty supportive. They wouldn't be the ones to like tell you that you can't do this, or, they'd be the first ones to say, yes, you can, or how can you, or was that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was never, you hear like, I've got to go to school for this, I've got to be this, and I've got to be that, or, trying to make the family, the parents, the, whoever happy. And they've always just been like, we trust that you're going to do the right thing. And those decisions that you make are gonna do what they do for you. Right. So, they've always supported, and they've always, I mean, obviously there's times when they're like, what in the world is this guy doing? Right. But but they've always been supportive, right?
Absolutely. I think that's super foundational to anybody that, especially in your line of work, very creative, in those fields. It's like having that early support from your parents, where it doesn't feel like you're doing something wrong, or they feel like you can't make a living off of this. So it feels like you're spinning the wheels in the wrong direction. I feel like some of those early interactions with your parents could demotivate you to continue on with whatever you're doing.
100%.
So
For sure.
yeah.
And I never really had a clear path, right? I was never like, I loved architecture,
Okay.
right? I was like, I want to be an architect. And I think 1 year into school, I was like, no,
Psych.
I don't. And it had a lot to do with the history of architecture, right?
Okay.
At the time, I was just not interested. And I am interested now, but then it was like, when do I get to create things? And why do I have to learn all this background when I've got my own ideas in my head that I just want to get on with creating? And why aren't we there yet? I think was the frustrating part, right? And that's when I never made the decision not to follow that path anymore. It just it led more towards, what can I design or create now, and not have to worry about like diving deep into the history and whatnot, right? So that kind of pushed me towards this like graphic design type visual communication stuff, right?
Absolutely.
That I was a little more into. You know, I, it's funny. Like I can't nail down why I went the way I went.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's funny how that happens. Early on in school though, were you, I mean, it sounds like you're probably into art classes, you were, drawing and painting, and was that
I know.
or how did you get into architecture? I mean, that's a pretty interesting.
I've always been obsessed with like buildings.
Okay.
Buildings and all just kind of all over the world,
Yeah.
right? How they get there. I mean, it just the process, the whole process, like even building this house, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know where to start, right? How does that process be? I was always very curious as to how all of that worked. How did it all come together?
Yeah.
And
when did that start?
But man, early, like Chrysler Building has been like favorite, right? I love that building. I love the way it looks. Love the way Empire State, obviously, right? And then you start seeing all these. It's like, oh, now this is the tallest building in the world, and this is the tallest building in the world, and it just like, And I think when I was young, it was it Sears Tower?
Oh yeah, in Chicago,
Right, Chicago.
Yeah.
I think that was at one point
the
up
tallest
there, and now it's like
for
it's a
sure.
cute little guy now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I ever wanted to actually build buildings.
Yeah.
Or if that's just like was an inspiration for me. Like I saw it, it looked cool. I thought I could do it, and I wanted to make it. I wanted to do something similar, right? And I don't even know if I don't think I ever took an architecture class, right?
Wow.
Right? It was like,
Yeah.
I never got to the point where, okay, sweet. Now I never made one of those little models, right? That are, I'm sure, such a pain to make, but the end product is so worth the time and energy and effort that you put into making it, that I could see that being pretty rewarding, but taking that idea out of your head and building it in that little physical was something that I really wanted to do. Never did it, but I learned that through, like in graphic design, right? What if I can use Adobe Illustrator to get an idea out of my head? It's similar, it's just not 3D. You know what I mean? Until you make it 3D. So I think I just started kind of steering myself in that direction.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up how like the process of like architecture, how like you go through it and it's like it might be a lot of work during the process, but at the end, how it's like rewarding. And that correlates directly to business, where it's
100%.
just like
Yeah.
the process is so like, kind of grueling, but then you look back and that process was so worth it in the end.
It
Oh,
always is, it seems
yeah.
like, you know?
Yeah.
And there's fails along the way, lots of
Mhm.
them. And even if a business fails, you can still look back and say, it was fun while it lasted. I learned a lot from it, you know, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I do think that, um, I do think there's a really big correlation there between, you know, that getting an idea out of your head and finally on paper or finally on canvas or finally on in a model form, you know?
For like
Same,
using art as like a metaphor in a way, yeah,
yeah,
for like business.
yeah, 100%. It's how do you bring it to life, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. And then you said that you were, you got into graphic design. Was that something that you took classes in,
Yeah,
like in high
so
school or something, or
so I went into college thinking architecture. High
okay,
school, I never really was.
in the arts?
I was in music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Did you play in music,
I
like band?
trumpet. I was a trumpet player.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, I loved it. It was fun. But then that kind of fell off when basketball was like number one. It's all I cared about. It's all I ever wanted to do. Um, you know, when everyone else had football, I was basketball. And back then, it wasn't as common as now, where you can jump into a sport and just ride out that sport. I mean, most of the athletes at my school were football, baseball, basketball, right? They played everything. I was just basketball focused year round was my thing.
Where did you grow up? Real quick?
New Mexico.
Oh, New Mexico.
Born in Albuquerque.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that scene was it pretty like I don't know, not very poppin' for like
It,
local sports and stuff?
no,
Or?
no, it was. I mean, we had our teams. Like it was a pretty good basketball state,
Yeah.
right? Um, I played in a really tough conference. We were always terrible,
Okay. Damn.
which is a bummer. But I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, one guy I played against, James Borrego, is now head coach of the Charlotte Hornets.
Oh wow.
And that dude, he just used to eat my lunch. Like he just used to tear me up. And you know, it's cool to see that, right? It's cool to look back and
That's
see.
why he ended up where he is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe.
I don't know.
I guess he's not playing, but at least he's coaching. But he's
I take that back.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, respect, right? Like,
yeah, respect.
It's cool. So yeah, Albuquerque. I mean, and I grew up 30 minutes outside of Albuquerque in this little tiny town, just country podunk little guy, and that was very different than Albuquerque. You know, like I was the only kid who wore Levi's. It was like Wrangler heavy, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't own a tractor or rodeo.
Was this in like the 80s, 90s?
This was like, see, I was in sixth grade, I think. Yeah, sixth grade. I moved from Albuquerque to Moriarty is what it's called.
What era would that have been?
Graduated in 97.
Okay. Damn.
So you're looking at that 91-ish.
Different America.
Man, is it ever? Is it ever? Like
Yeah.
I remember, and you hear people say this, oh, I remember when, right? like I do. I remember we didn't have cell phones at sixth grade, seventh grade. I think I got a cell phone when I was a junior or senior. And this was not a cell phone. This was like a cell phone,
Yeah,
right?
brick.
Like at one point, my family had a phone with a cord,
Okay.
but it had a zipper pouch so like came in your car with you. It was called a car phone, I think is what they call it.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing literally had a cord on it. And then it got a little bit better, smaller. And then Motorola came out with something that had a little flip down microphone. And then but it's so sick to look back and see. I've owned all these things, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of people will never, like internet. No, that was not a thing on a phone, especially. I mean, where I went to high school, you only had to dial the last 4 digits of someone's number because the town was so small. So I could call your home phone with just 4 digits.
The first 6 were just always the same.
I don't even know if they were the same. It's just that
They just didn't. There was no digits. There
you
was just 4
didn't.
digits.
You just didn't need it because
It's just extensions.
yeah, basically we were just one big office.
Dude, that's amazing.
But looking back at like video games,
Yes,
like I had a Commodore 64. Who knows? You know what that is?
I don't even know what that is.
And then Atari.
Well, yeah, Atari.
Right.
I mean, that's like where my video game knowledge starts. Is at Atari. So was Commodore 64 before
it was
Atari?
like computer based. Yeah, it was before Atari. I'm pretty sure. But I've got I've still got the first Nintendo we've ever owned.
Nice.
And the Super
NES.
Nintendo.
Yes.
And and so I've got this collection of things. I've got a Game Boy that still works at home, which I've always wanted to go on an airplane and just get that front seat and just get the Game Boy out and just
play some Pokemon.
Just check out the reactions of people as they walk on the plane. But it's been really, I feel lucky to have experienced all of these things from zero technology to now where we're at. It's been really it's cool to be able to say you've been a part of all those, right? And with like my children, right? They don't know life without an iPad.
Yeah, it's a different era. Yeah, for
sure. Which is it's good and bad, right? It's pros and cons. There's a lot of good that comes from it, but also a lot of bad that comes from it. So managing that's different. But like, and you'll hear everybody my age say that, oh yeah, we had to come home when the lights, when the sun went down. There was no, hey, come home. It was, you get on your bike. Everyone had to go to the home school, right? Like there was a school. If you lived in this territory, you went to this school, right? So 1 block up, 2 blocks up, 3 blocks up was all the friends, so you could get on your bike, you could ride up a couple blocks, you could go to your friend's house, they can't come out, you go to the next friend's house, they can't come out, ride around, cause trouble.
What a community. That's crazy.
It's a whole different thing. Now it's like I've got 6 schools, 7 schools within a mile of my house that I could put my kids in any of them.
Yeah.
Which creates, it's a lack of community. Honestly,
for sure.
If I'm being
because
honest,
it's separating everybody.
Yeah, like I can't. The kids that live in our neighborhood don't go to the same school as,
because they have the choice of 5 other schools. Yep. And that makes sense. And that's interesting because like growing up as a kid, I was still in the era. I'm a 90s kid. I was born in 94. So I grew up in the era still of like no internet, or very early on. Like I was in first grade when like Windows XP came out. So it was like, that was my first experience into a computer. But so we were outside heavy, we were playing outside and playing with the neighborhood kids. And a lot of them went to our school, the school district, as it is. And it was the same way where it's just like, if you lived in like Granville, you went to Granville Public Schools. Wyoming, you went to Wyoming Public Schools. And
right.
So it's just like, they would separate it by location. So it was like different like central, east, west, south within the district. But it's just like, if you lived within, neighbor distance, likely chances you went to the same school,
right?
Because of your location. So I feel like that growing up was really important to me, that's like making friends in the neighborhood and kind of like just playing games and like being a kid outside and stuff. And I feel like growing up with technology, I guess it's like a double-edged sword, because kids now are so advanced and they're so much smarter and so much faster, because of their early adaptations to technology. But I feel like still I'm so thankful that I was able to grow up, just like you're saying, through these eras, kind of see things and see the evolution of things so quickly, because in the generation that I grew up in, I feel like there was still so much advancements in the last, 30 years.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And it's just going to continue, but it's like my kids, you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes where I could hop on my bike and go to any friend's house. Everyone was accessible. They're not, my kids' friends are not that accessible. They live a little bit further. You couldn't ride your bike. They're crossing major streets. There's all these factors now. But the way they connect is on iPad. They come home from school, they're on FaceTime with this group of
that's sweet.
7, 8, 9 kids. And they're all, you can see that some of you can see their faces, some you can't. they're playing
They turn their video off.
yeah, like, they
Like, I
will
don't
be
have my makeup on. Fucking 6-year-olds.
but they'll play Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever, but they're
Yeah.
on the phone with their friends. So there's this, do I take this device from my child when that's how he's communicating with his friends? Like there's this,
Right.
it's hard to figure out how much time. Um, I mean, my son will walk into my bedroom on the phone with a friend and I'm in the shower or my wife's in the shower or something. It's like you got to pay attention. There's a camera on that thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just getting them to understand like nobody knows the rules to this thing. It's new, so just trying to learn how much to give and when to cut it off has been a challenge for sure, but we're getting there. But and we want them to have friends. We want them to communicate with their friends. We want them to have that community.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to let them do that
for sure. And that makes me think of like back in the day when you used to pick up the landline and just talk on the phone.
Yeah.
All this time to your friends.
Yeah.
Just like when you were at school with them. It's not that long ago.
Yeah, and like my brother and I had our own line finally.
Oh, nice.
Because we used the phone so much.
Wow.
And then I think at one point we got that cord that is like a 50 footer, so you can like go into the closet, and like
I think
have a private conversation.
That scene in have you seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah, of course.
Where Kip walks through the entire house. No, it was Napoleon. It was Napoleon. Napoleon walks to the entire house. Man, no, but that's like their form of, like you said, like community with their friends and being able to connect outside of school on like a more personal level.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of tie back. We were talking about graphic design. We kind of went on a direction that I'm glad we went in. But it's like to tie it back to graphic design because we're talking about growing up in the 90s. Graphic design was a totally different industry in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like that. Was Adobe Illustrator even invented in 90,
so
early 90s?
I want to trying to think of when. It's hard for me to place these moments in time, but I used to go to, you ever heard of Photoshop World?
No, I remember Photoshop Elements, like the program, but Photoshop World, was that like a place?
It was a convention.
Oh, it was a convention.
And you'd go to Photoshop World and like, I remember Scott Kelby, he's like world-renowned Photoshop guy, it was like any conference you could go to now to get taught or training.
Right.
But I used to go to it because it had nothing to do with the job, it had nothing to do with anything. I loved it so much. So I would go there and sit in and learn, and there's student discounts and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think at one point after I was out of school, I used Photoshop to Photoshop my student ID so that I could get the student discount at Photoshop World.
Full circle.
Full circle moments.
Like, look what you taught me.
Yeah, exactly.
But you've seen my talents.
Thank you for that. But and the things we do for discounts as students, right? So, I don't remember when I started using Illustrator at all. My journey in college was a short one. I was 2 years in school and then lost my scholarship just because I like to have fun. It's funny, you had my partner, strap partner on here, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
I was also a student manager for the basketball team.
Oh, wow. For your wow.
I also sold burned CDs on campus.
So many parallels.
But that was like the first time I was trying to make money, right? Is just figured it out.
Yeah.
Oh, this works. These basketball players want the new music, but don't want to spend this on a CD, so I'll make it cheaper for them.
That's funny. I kind of want to go into that, like early entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah.
Is that like was that the first time where you got the taste of business and you're like, this is what I want to do? Like, I want to make my own type of money, or were you kind of still at that time like, I got to find a job? I tried.
I think that was the first time I got a taste of it, and just seeing that this for that, and then now I've got money and I can do it again, and I did every week, right? I went every Tuesday, got 10 CDs, burned them, and then you were allowed to return them as long as they weren't open, as long as the seal wasn't broken. And I knew how to open the CD without breaking the seal. So I'd burn one copy, put it back, take it back, and I would get 10 more the following Tuesday. So, and they would only let you return. I don't remember, but I remember only being able to do 10 at a time. The store was called Hastings. It was like movies, music, and books type of a deal.
One of those like just mom and pop.
No, it
videos.
was, I think there were multiple at the time.
Oh,
It
okay.
was almost like a Virgin Records type before Virgin Records. But yeah, so I started to see that. And then I think I took a job so I always worked. From when I was young, my dad was in grocery business, and he managed a grocery store in this small town, and he was commuting back and forth, which is why we ended up moving out that way. But he would always let us work and just pay us cash under the table. So I was bagging groceries, stocking shelves, whatever, right? It was all grocery.
Mhm.
But then, it's good to see that putting in this time gets you this money.
Mhm. Especially
So that was
early.
kind of the start of it. And then going to college, it was harder to get a job. Well, I was a student manager, but they only paid you for 10 hours a week. Like, you got paid for 10 hours a week, and then you got credit because it acted as I think a class or something like that. And then you got training tables, so you got to eat with the team, right? 7 days a week. There was one place you could go eat, and then you got clothes and gear and whatnot. So that kind of made up for it. But then I think that was the start of that entrepreneurial mindset. And then I took a job at Pepsi,
Whoa.
and I just didn't like it. I didn't like,
Corporate?
yeah, that was, I think, probably the only not true corporate job, because I then went on to work for Hyatt.
Oh, the Regent or the Hyatt hotels or
I
whatever?
worked at, yeah,
Yeah.
I've been obsessed with nightlife for my whole life, which is weird. I had a older cousin who I kind of looked up to. I think he was a bartender at one point. Got me really excited about nightclubs, nightlife. I think at one point, younger than I should have been talking about nightclubs, I told my mom that I want to open nightclubs, right?
That was one of those like, okay,
She's
son.
like, I think she was like, no, you don't. No, I do. Like, that's, and I think she
No, you
asked
don't.
for the reason, right? She's like, why?
Of course, as any mom should.
Because I want to be the reason that all these people are having a good time.
That's beautiful.
That was it. I saw it. I was like, wow, that's really cool. So I was always obsessed with nightlife. Well, 2 years in college, I got the boot, moved to Phoenix.
Okay, so it's right now.
Actually started a job with Hyatt shortly after that, bartending
In Phoenix?
in Albuquerque.
Oh, okay.
And then asked my boss, hey, I want to transfer. Where do you want to transfer? I said, Gainey Ranch in Scottsdale. He goes, it's impossible. That's like the highest revenue bar. Those bartenders aren't going anywhere. You're never going to get a job there, right? Well, will you write me the letter? He's like, yeah. So he wrote the letter. I ended up getting a job
At Gainey Ranch.
at Gainey Ranch. And I moved out here in 2001. And September 11th happened. So where most people were freezing jobs, it was, you know what I mean? Like, I think I moved here in August or September of 2001, set to start September sometime. That happened. For some reason, they didn't freeze my job, but they freezed a bunch of other jobs, frozen. So I started, and I was working at the pool bar, and it's like September, October, November, December, it's cold, but I mean, it's dead, right? After September 11th, like, it was just crickets, So I ended up being with Hyatt for quite a few years, and then ended up moving out to Vegas to open a place called the Playboy Club. And that kind of, that got me reunited with one of the basketball players from the college team, who I then started working with.
Okay.
And I worked with him for 3 years, traveling with him every city, every game.
Oh, wow.
And then summer times, we'd go to San Antonio. He'd work out twice a day. I was just part of that kind of whole journey.
Was it like an assistant type of level or
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's kind of assistant type stuff, and a lot of that had to do with nightlife, right? Like these guys like to go out. Um, I had a network at the time from being. I mean, even at the Hyatt, I was making that, building the network, the nightlife network, without knowing that I was building the nightlife network. And then went to Vegas, did the nightlife thing, got reconnected with him, ended up working with him. He retired. And then that took me into, I moved back to Arizona, had no idea what was next. No clue. Just like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I don't know how we got here. What were we talking about before?
Man, I don't exactly know what that was or what we were talking about, but I feel like this direction is great. And I want to kind of go into like your love for nightlife, but translating that into like the love for music
Right.
and like going to like shows. And was music always a big influence on your life? I mean, obviously you were burning CDs, so you were listening to music heavy. And
music has always been.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is, so ball player retired, I moved back to Arizona in with my now wife, and got a phone call, the most random phone call, from this girl named Angela. She's like, "Hey, I'm DJ Vice's wife. Is there any way you could call him tomorrow? Can you get on a phone call with him tomorrow?" Not knowing, no idea what it was for.
Yeah.
I was going to Vegas a ton. I had just moved back from Vegas. I didn't know him, knew of him, I would say. But I knew a lot of the DJs in the Vegas scene
Yeah.
who were under the same management as him. And I don't think we were at the time, I mean, we knew of each other, we knew each other-ish, because I used to take, anytime I saw Vice was playing and I was on the road with the NBA guy, 100% that's where we were going, because I knew music would be good, energy would be right. And then, it would be me and the ball player and maybe 4 other players or 5 other players. Or it got to the point where they knew that I was going to be planning something, so they would ask me or get my number and say, "Hey, what's good tonight? What are we doing tonight?"
Been that guy. I love that.
It's true, but then Angela called me, so I got on the phone with Vice the next day, and Vice is like, "Yo, I've been looking for a tour manager, and I need somebody that can tour." And I'm like, I said, "Eric, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means at the time, right?" He's like, "It's exactly what you do now, but instead of for a ball player, you'll do it for a DJ." And I was like, "Do I get to travel?" He's like, "Yes." I was like, "I'm in." So that's where that started, right? So I started touring with no knowledge of, besides my network, which I had built over the last however many years. My only knowledge of DJing was music, right? So he's like, "All you need to learn is the technical side of things." And at the time, he was on Technics 1200s. So he was playing on record players with a mixer and a laptop and using Serato, right? So he had control records, right, which sent the signal to the laptop, and that's how it all worked. So I had to learn that. So still pretty heavy into music at that time. I was with him for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. My first year with him, I met Kaskade's manager at a pool party. Vice was playing. Kaskade had a residency at the same place in Vegas. I met her. Her name was Stephanie. Awesome. We kind of just got along, and I think she was looking for a tour manager for Ryan for Kaskade at the time, and I was just like, I'm pretty new to the business. I don't know anybody, but let's stay in touch, right? And then time went by. She ended up reaching out for me to work. she somehow put together that I was going to be in Kansas City with Vice the same night that Kaskade was going to be in Kansas City. Vice for a nightclub. Vice was predominantly nightclub DJ, right? Probably the biggest of his time. DJ AM was kind of his mentor, passed away. Vice kind of moved into these like top ranks where he was just the guy, right? All clubs wanted him. He played all over the US, every nightclub. I mean, we were doing a lot of shows a year, and just rocking nightclubs, right? Which was awesome. But Stephanie had asked about tour managers. I didn't have one, and then Kansas City came along. She's like, "Hey, I see you're going to be in Kansas City with Vice on this date. Would you be willing to help Ryan? He's playing a festival, so his set's way earlier than Vice's will be."
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, "Yeah, sure. Let me just make sure it's cool with Eric." Asked Eric, and Eric was like, and at the time, low key, I was a massive Kaskade fan, right? Like I loved his music. His music did a lot for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of what gave me that energy and got me going. And so it was exciting for me to be able to like, oh, dude, I get to go do a show with him. That's great.
Was he pretty big because he's a household name in the EDM world. So at that time, was he, already, the guy, or was he still kind of in his early years?
No, this was right after he came off a massive tour called Freaks of Nature.
Okay.
No, this is before that tour. Can't remember.
Blur now. So many years.
It's crazy. But anyway, he was big in the space for sure. But he had always toured basically alone. They had tried, they had a couple people that would bounce out with him here and there, but yeah, they didn't have a full-time guy where he, like, if anybody needed a full-time guy, he needed a full-time guy, right? So I'll remember we played this festival in Kansas. Headliner was Eminem.
Oh, what? Kaskade Eminem show?
So Eminem's on the main stage. We're on a side stage. Still have a pretty insane crowd.
Yeah.
But basically, I think our time slots crossed.
Okay.
So it was like Kaskade here, and then boom into M, which was insane. But I think I finally told Ryan this story, but I had never touched a CDJ in my life until that day.
That's like the CD turntables.
Yeah, so instead of like the record player, it's like the electronic version.
Yeah, totally. I remember my uncle had a couple of those Gemini CDJs.
And I was just like, I'll figure it out, right? So I did some study and I checked the YouTube stuff out. I called a few people and just got the gist. And went up on stage with his SD cards, got plugged in, got them all linked, checked the mic, and then came down and he went up on stage and started the set. Audio came on and I was just like, man.
Yeah, you're probably one of those like,
yeah. I was nervous about that one, but like
that was your first time.
That was like the first time like interacting with CDJs. I knew of them, right? See them in clubs all the time, but we just used something different.
Was that their first time working with Kaskade?
That was the first time working.
So that's probably even more nerves. Just like, I don't want to put this up because if I do, then then
it was fun while it lasted.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was never like, I never expected to work for him. Just from that, especially, I was just like, yeah, I'll help you out. I've got you. Like, happy to help where I can, know? And it worked. And then we went to Taco Bell after. Look out.
Deal.
Done deal. I was like, this is my guy. No, but I think, it was the only thing open. So, but after that, right, I continued with Vice. Stephanie would reach out here and there. I think she sent me a list of 10 shows at one point. Hey, I need help with these.
Oh, wow.
I put them in front of Eric. Eric's like, we're already committed on these dates. And I think I took maybe 4 or 5 of them or something like that. And that's when Ryan and I started to build a relationship. And from there, I think it was middle of the year. He had asked, how do I steal you? I think is what he said. And I'm like, listen, I'm a pretty loyal guy. it's the middle of the year. I've probably got flights booked through December already. I can't leave someone hanging like that. If you need someone at the end of the year still, please reach out. Um, which he ended up reaching out, right? They ended up reaching out. So I went out with Ryan. I was with Ryan for seven years.
Yeah, and it's funny because when he reached out and asked you, he was at first he's probably like, "Damn, I wish I would have been able to take him." But I'm sure at the time he saw that as like very respectable thing because like that kind of shows like your dedication even more so to someone that's not him, so that it shows what you could do for him. And I think that was probably something like even if it was something subconscious where it's just like that's a good guy because he didn't leave that other guy hanging. He's not gonna leave me hanging.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't, I never thought of it that way. I just knew like, man, if I was just a bounce,
For sure. And that
like,
just talks about your character. And I think that's kind of my point where it's just like Kaskade probably just by that
yeah,
action of you just like because I'm sure like a lot of people would just jump at opportunities without, and just saying like F that opportunity, this is way cooler. I'm just gonna jump ship and jump on
right.
with you. And at the time, he might be, excited to get you. But I think, like I said, it's just kind of like to see you like delay that gratification in a way where you can be patient. You could work the rest of the year out and let him know up front, like, hey, I got this dedication. Like I'm a loyal guy. So if you need me at the end of the year, hit me up. And that's, even something like just if he didn't think about it too hard. But I think that's just something that like you
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was it
pick
was
up.
in there
It was
somewhere.
in there
Yeah,
somewhere where it's just
yeah,
like this is a good guy. Like he probably like learned about you without really knowing you too much, just by you having that
yeah,
real conversation with him. But
for sure. And like these become like these are your people, right?
yeah,
Like this is who you're with day in, day out. You don't sleep, you don't eat good. Sometimes you're drinking. Like so you go through a lot with those people, right? You become like you're almost with, you know, Vice got married when I was working with him. Um, Cascade was always married the whole time I worked with him, but like you almost become like that. You see them more than their wives do at some points throughout those touring seasons, you know. So you get really close. So like with Eric, like we were close, like we were super close. We had a lot of fun. We worked well together. So yeah, just leaving him hanging was not the right thing to do, and I knew that, right? So and it worked out for the better. Was it hard to say no? Yeah, of course, but I knew I was doing the right thing, or I thought I was doing the right thing, and it worked. It all worked out, right? So, um, yeah. So it was. So that was That was a 7 year run with him.
Something I wanted to ask you about is like you've done some massive shows with Cascade
Yeah.
over 7 years. Is there one that kind of stood out as like the most attendance or like the highest energy level, or is there one show out of the 7 years that kind of stood out to you?
I mean, Coachella 2015 was insane. I
He
mean,
was headlining.
yeah, he was. I don't think he was headlining. I think after us, Drake was after us.
Oh, Jesus.
Um, Drake was after us on. So we basically played the sunset. I mean, no better production element than the sunset, which we've realized, right? Like, wait, you could go into festivals and play sunset
Rather than being the last
rather
set
than
of the
being
night
that like
headline.
headliner, and it's almost more magical than anything, right? And he really started to tap into that, and then a lot of guys are doing that, but girls, but Coachella 2015 magic. I mean, it was absolutely insane. We didn't hire drone operators. We didn't really drones were fairly like a new thing,
2015,
flying
yeah,
over
for sure.
crowds.
For
Like
sure.
it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, but there were these drone operators that came out of. They ran to the back after the set, and they're like, "You have to see this." And they showed us this footage, and I'm goosebumps. And you can there's I think there's a is there a Coachella documentary? Is it Coachella? I can't remember. There's a documentary that shows this footage.
So it's on the internet.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
it's on the internet.
I'm gonna find it.
It
I'm gonna for sure find it.
it's
Put it right here.
it was I think it was Mashable. I think it was a
Okay.
Mashable article that released the footage first, but I mean, the crowd just went forever. And this back in 2015 kind of hadn't been done before. The crowd like that, you hadn't seen the crowd like that. Now
Tens of
now
thousands
you
of
see it
people.
was, I think it was 80, 85. It was big.
Oh, I can't even fathom that amount of people.
It was big. I mean, it went forever. It just kept going and
That's
going
like
and going.
4 NBA stadiums.
It was huge. It was just incredible, right? And that footage is just awesome. But I mean, that's a big show. We self-produced a festival called Sun Soaked
Okay.
on the beach in Long Beach, feet in the sand, right? Always been a dream of his, something he's always wanted to do. Finally figured it out. A lot of logistics that go into moving things on sand, right? It's like it's the whole thing. So
And electronics and stuff like that.
yeah, figured it out, and we did 2 years of that, and that was just those feel good because your team does it, right? And sure, you've got, there's a lot of people involved, a lot of hands in the, on deck, but it was special to be a part of those and to see his crowd base just show up, right? Like his fan base was just so diehard and dedicated, and like see the same faces in every city, right? Like, I mean, we would do these redo tours where small room, 250 cap, tickets sold out in this 1 second. We would keep it black, right? Black, literally pitch black. I mean, I would go in before and I would tape over windows. I would ask for, can I tape over that exit sign? I know it's illegal, but right, like,
What's the fine?
Right? I mean, we would try to get it as dark as possible, and then he would play these long. I mean, 6. I mean, I've seen him play 8-hour set at some point. But you wait and it's just dark and it's sweaty and it's hot and people are just vibing, right? And then you hit them with like, all we had in there was a disco ball, and you just do like one look of the disco ball and they're just like, they lose their minds because
vibrating.
they're just so used to this darkness for an hour, right?
Yeah, totally.
Or you throw like lasers on and it's just
sensory
it's a game changer.
overload, bro.
But we do like, I don't remember how many cities were on those tours, but we would see people who would go to every stop.
So they follow you, yeah.
Like that is cool. And I'll tell you what, dude, the amount of times I've heard a fan tell him that his music has changed their lives, that's a real thing, right? Music is powerful, and it has changed and gotten people through so many things and helped people in ways that, I mean, he knows, he's heard, right? He's heard it over and over and over again, but I don't think anyone really understands the magnitude of what a song or what lyrics or whatever it is about that song that you connect to, what that can really, really do for someone is really, really special. So that was, for me, that's fun. Like, you're a part of a show that's going to change lives, and you're doing that night in and day, night, day, every day, a couple shows a day, sometimes, all over the world. And it's, to be a part of that is really exciting,
To hear those types of words come from fans, as an artist, I think is one of the highest compliments you can receive.
For sure.
Where it's like your passions and your love and your words are changing someone's life in a positive way, and they feel so moved by it that they feel like they need to let you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that it kind of like makes you feel a lot more passionate about that, because it's just like, this is affecting more than just me.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. Like, I'll see him in Vegas, pop in, and just it's cool to see this same thing, but it's a whole different age group now, right? It's like those people that I was seeing in the 2015 crowd, right? That's 8 years ago. Where are they? Are they still at festivals? Most likely not. They've moved on. Are they still listening to Kaskade? Probably here and there, right? Like but now we've got this new generation of people that he's playing music to, and he's just, and again, touching people's lives, right? So every, you know, people don't understand, like, when I was touring, it was like, you have the best job ever. You have the best job ever, right? It's like you hear that a lot. And yes, it's an incredible, incredible job. However, nobody really talks about how grueling and how hard and how much work it is and how much there is that goes into it. And even more so than that, when you get out of touring, how hard that is. I mean, it is. I had the hardest time when I left Ryan, adapting to real life, right? Like, it's extremely hard because you're used to something for so long, um, and then you just flip the switch into, here we are, right? It's like, wait, I don't have to go to the airport. I don't have to get on a plane. I mean, I'm comfortable on planes. I love flying. It's soothing, right? But I've had to teach myself that. Like when I started with Vice, I couldn't sleep on a plane. I soon learned this is the only time I'm going to be able to sleep. So I need to figure it out, right? So, but yeah, I mean, shout out to anybody in touring, because they're putting their lives into it, right? And the artist gets all the credit, but the team behind the artist is working just as hard, if not harder, day in and day out to make sure things are smooth, to make sure things are going how they're supposed to go. Um, and they probably haven't slept in days. Like you do, you go days without eating. Like you go, it's not it is fun. Don't get me wrong. It is. I feel truly blessed to have been able to tour like that with a big artist, and for so many years. And I've made many friends and many, people that I'll never forget, and I'll probably always talk to. But yeah, it's at the on the other side of that coin is my family who's home without me, right? If I'm doing 200 days on the road, that leaves me home for 165 days. Those 165 days that I'm home, I'm probably either sick because it's caught up with me, or I'm just not there, right? I'm tired. I haven't slept. I call it, and this is funny because we are on Mars, but I've always called it being on Mars. When I come home from a 9-day stint, 12 gigs, 13 hours of sleep total, when I get home, I call that being on Mars, because you're not you're not here, right? You're just like delirious. You're in another place, and it's takes a toll, right? So especially with family, especially with kids, you miss everything, right? I think I was in China. We had just had our he's probably one or two, Kempton, and he got a really bad cut, had to go get stitches. Well, I'm on the other side of the world. My wife trying to get a hold of me is like, she knows where I am, but she doesn't know where I am, right? My phone's off, or not off, but it's not. I don't wake up. If I get to sleep, I'm sleeping. Like I get sleep through anything, right?
And it's a time zone totally
Oh, it's
different.
like
Yeah.
literally the other side,
24
right?
hour
So,
difference.
it's things like that where it's like, man, you just feel the guilt. Like, gosh, I wasn't there for that. Or, fun things like first steps or first words, or like you just start to understand that, like, although touring is incredible, it's not as incredible as this family that you've created, right? And there's nothing more valuable than spending time with them, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, it's and dude, shout out to like Cascade, for instance, Vice. Ryan's got 3 daughters, right? He can't leave the road. If he leaves the road, Kaskade doesn't exist anymore, right? He has to be there. He's the face, right? So
That's feeding the family.
yeah. So like it's different for him. Any of his tour crew can always leave, right? So unless he wants to turn the thing off, this is what he signed up for, you know? So,
Absolutely.
you know, Vice too. Vice has now 2 children, but you know, these guys that are out touring with families, if they can't bring their family with, which a lot of them do, it gets hard.
Absolutely. I mean, these are full scale productions. You know,
Yeah.
with these guys, these are A-list guys. Like they can't cut corners. They need these people to help the ball rolling. And like you said, like the artist gets all the recognition, and they're the face of the brand, I guess you could say. But it's a well-oiled machine, and
Yeah.
that's something that's it's really heavy when you talk about like missing things, and that kind of goes back to how you grew up with a very value based family. I'm sure that was something that early on, having your first kid and missing out on certain experiences that you now wish you may have had, but obviously everything happens for a reason, and there was a reason why you were out doing what you had to do, providing for your family. But to then bring it back to moving into a place where you're like, okay, I've been in this for as long as I want to be in, and now I want to settle back down and kind of come back to Phoenix, live with my wife and kids, and be a dad full
Yeah.
time, and then have gigs on the side and have other jobs. And you went on to start your own company, is that right?
Yeah. I started, I mean, I've been consulting, right?
Yeah.
Ever since I left touring. So I help people here and there, but it's never like multiple days. It's
Mhm.
one in, one out, maybe 2 max, but
Okay.
it's not, and that's like, I still love it, you know, and I'll always love it. So it gives me a little taste. It gives me a little sprinkle, but I don't have to fly to, you know, to Greece to get it done. I can just go to Vegas
And
and knock
consulting,
it out.
like, with, like, in the music industry, are you saying?
In touring, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Like
yeah,
if
yeah, okay.
and listen, if somebody needs somebody to fill in, you know, that happens here and there. Though they can call me and ask
Sure.
me, right? I'll fill in for whoever it is for a night or 2 because they are getting married or they are having a baby or whatever what that might look like. And then took a stab at an agency during COVID. That didn't work very well. That was like just terrible timing. But
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's because of COVID that it
yeah,
probably,
it's
like,
just
didn't work out.
nothing. You can't get face to face with people. You
Yeah.
can't. I mean, this was centered around athletes, and
Okay.
athletes don't want to talk to strangers. I mean, and they wouldn't be strangers, you know. But it was just not the right time
Oh,
to
yeah.
do it.
Everyone was scared.
Do I
Yeah.
think there's a time and place for it? Of course, but and then we kind of moved into Casey and I started talking about strap.
How did you meet Casey?
I met Casey through book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and just a little bit of background information. That's how I know Matt as well, through Davon Wade. That's Devin Booker's brother. Him and Mike Schiffman,
Yeah,
Davon,
the
Mike
boys.
Schiffman, and
Yeah,
I all met up back in 2016, 17, maybe something like that. Devin's early in his career. He was gonna just start a Twitch channel.
Yep.
He was gonna start playing video games online. But yeah, so going into, you met Casey through book. You guys were kind of just hanging out in similar circles, or
You
kind of what
know,
happened?
I think we were attempting to put together a YouTube channel for him.
Okay, so it was still kind of on that production
It was
wave
on
of
that.
like still trying to figure out what his direction was, because
Yeah,
book wasn't really super heavy online early. Like he was kind of like on Instagram and socials and stuff, but
but he stays out of like.
yeah, that's just his. It seems like his nature to
Right.
kind of
Tends
keep
to lay
to
low,
himself.
right?
Yeah.
Doesn't want to put himself out there. And I think even when the Twitch idea got brought up, it's just he's like, well, when I play video games, that's my time. That's my downtime.
Yeah.
Like I don't want everybody to see that. But then when he sits down to play video games and gets a glass of wine, he puts Instagram live on. So it's like that's the same thing.
Totally.
You know, like there's a platform for it if you're interested. So I think we built the channel and maybe it sat there kind of empty for a little bit. And I think he finally started on there, which is great. But I think we were looking at doing YouTube we had a concept for YouTube, and I think it was Drew and Casey that came in, and that's how I met
I
him.
think they were in 2018 or so. They went out to LA to kind of start and
Yeah,
talking about like they were creating content for him, and that was kind of like when Devin really started. Like, okay, let's start putting stuff out there and let's start
right,
making things. So that was part of that same wave, like trying to figure it out.
exactly. And
Okay.
that's when Casey and I met, and then Casey and I stayed in touch always after that. I helped him with off the record,
Oh,
just
okay.
not as a business, like just as a mentor, right? Like,
Nice.
um, he valued my opinion coming from music, and I always pushed him to don't become a promoter, don't sell, because they weren't selling tickets, right? It was more of a RSVP and then buy merch, right? It wasn't a ticketed event for a little while. And I always pushed them to stay away from ticketing and you just become a promoter. It's like you're doing something so different. Try to maintain that if possible, right? So, but he and I always wanted to work together. We always tried to, and he's the one that connected me with Ben, who I tried to start the agency with.
Right.
And
Oh, wow. So when you started the agent, that was with Ben? That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So
Love that.
so he and I tried to do that, and
Gang.
but Casey and I were always trying to find the way. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget. He called. He's like, "I got it. I got the one." Right. And then we just spent for like 6 months. We were on the phone for 10 hours a day. I mean, I remember being in my backyard just pacing. And it's just, it's one of those things that you just know it's a great idea. And how big it gets, it doesn't matter. It's like we can bring this thing to life. We know how to do it. And if we don't, we'll figure it out. And we did, and it's still going strong, and it's been awesome. So working with Casey for me has been a dream, right? Like he's awesome. He's one of the most creative people I've ever met. And so that's how he and I got connected. And I think he and I we'll have a lot of future projects, right? Kind of forever,
Yeah.
even if it's just to bring an idea to life and not monetize, like that's fine too. But
I mean, yeah, Casey, he's like a brother to you, it seems like, in a sense where it's like you brought him in and he was living with you for a little bit when
Yeah.
you first moved to Phoenix. And I feel like, that type of connection, those type of relationships, I feel like last a really long time, especially when you guys are able to bridge the gap between personal and business relationships and keep both of them very healthy.
For sure.
You guys have a very good balance.
Yeah, we're open about things. Like if difference in opinion, that's welcome with us.
Right.
We don't. It's not a fight. It's a conversation. And that's how I think life in general should work. But if business ended tomorrow, there's no doubt in my mind he and I'll we'll be friends forever. Like that's not going anywhere. So I think that's the best case, and it doesn't always work like that. It really doesn't. And so I feel like we're very lucky to have found that, and to have been patient, right? Not forced into let's try this and let's try this. No, we just it came, and that was it. It clicked, and here we are.
Yeah, and I mean, it took like two years and some change for you guys to actually do something. You guys met in those earlier days, and then it wasn't until COVID, after COVID, 2021, that you guys started Strap.
Yeah, we started talking about it early 2021, I think, and launched September 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just like that. It's crazy how when you take the time to let things marinate and see how it's supposed to go, and don't force things, like you said, where it's just kind of like let things play out and just keep the passion and the intention and the actual genuinity. Because I feel like sometimes people go into things.
Authenticity.
Absolutely. 100. That's the word right there. Like authenticity, being 100% genuine with yourself and the people that you'll be serving in a way, I feel like some people get into business with the intention of making money, or trying to be someone that they're not currently, getting clout or whatever. And all these things, those are done with bad intentions in a way, where it's just like the the passion isn't necessarily there. And
Yeah.
I guess there's something to say about like having the drive to like want to be someone, but then at the same time, it's just like having that drive, but then also doing it and going about it the right way, where it's just like you're doing it with like 100% of your heart and your passion and your drive, and it's not coming from a place of like lack.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like both of you guys live kind of similar lives in like the mindset of just like abundance mindset, and like enough for me, you, her, him, all of us, all of these things where that mindset allows you to build business successfully, because it's not like his opinion is more valid than yours and vice versa. And that's something that I think, you being as experienced as you are, and having your hand in so many different industries throughout your life, like for you to come into it and be very respectable for Casey being such a young business owner, and being somewhat of like a mentor to him, and teaching him, and kind of guiding him in the direction, whilst also working with him without being the guy that's just like, all right, kid, let me show you how
Right.
it's done. You know
Right.
what I mean? I think that's really important, because that plays into the relationship that you and Casey have built,
For sure.
where it's like he feels like he can trust you, and he can go to you for things and feel like he's not stupid, or he feels like he's inexperienced because he hasn't done it as long as you. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. I think it's all about like implementing his ideas is crucial. You know, Li- Experience doesn't matter, right? You don't have to be experienced to have good ideas, and then it's just how you implement those ideas and how you bring them to life that really, that's what counts, So I learn from him all the time, and hopefully he can say the same, um, well, yeah, yeah, experience is important, of course, but and dude, I mean, back to tour managing, it's a new fire every day. You can't train someone to be a tour manager, right? It's almost like it's instant innovation, right? You're like, okay, new problem, we need to fix it now, right? So doing that so many times over and over, I mean, literally every single festival you go to, there's a new issue. And a lot of the times it's not the same issue. It's not a common issue. It's not something that you've dealt with before. You're dealing with a whole different set of people, a whole different set of production, a whole different stage build, a whole different, like sometimes your team is different. So there's always something new. So you're always on your feet, putting out fires and adapting.
That's the word.
And then as you learn to adapt to each artist, right? I mean, or each problem, like when you've done it enough, like with Cascade, I got to the point where I was very confident that I knew exactly what he would have done in that situation. So I would just make the decision. And then after the fact, I would tell him, "Hey, this was the issue. Here's how we solved it." And he'd be like,
Hell yeah, thanks, Matt.
"That's exactly what we wanted." So, but then that applies to with Casey. Like I've been in and experienced so many problems and issues that I'm able to sit back and just like, let's try it. You know what I mean? Because I know we can fix it. I know we can tweak it. I know there's always something that we can add, subtract, change to make it work how we're picturing it working. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's more like trial by fire. Like, let's just give it a shot. And Casey and I are both we're pretty similar. So it's not like we have these two complementary personalities. We're like kind of the same.
Yeah.
Um, so there's things we need help on, right? Where we need a more admin style, organized type, you know, being to come in and say, wait a minute, this, like, let's go get those opinions, because he and I are on that same wavelength a lot
Hmm.
of the time. And we finally got to the point where it was like, who nobody's gonna notice the things that we are noticing. Let's just put it out there, right? Put it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. and we had to really work on that. Like, we had to really, um, get we had to release things that weren't perfect, and then tweak them in the back end or fix them along the way, because otherwise we never would have launched, because we cared too much about how this looks or how this feels, or this isn't perfect and that's not perfect. So that's something that he and I both had to, like, get over the hump and just let's let it go. Let it free. Set it free, and then we'll take feedback, and then
Absolutely.
we'll tweak, you know?
Yeah, and that's like a principle that a lot of artists can relate to, where it's like the idea of just putting it out there and just like being confident and being able to adapt. I love that word. And using that word in the sense of if business, I think is so important because it's like you said, there's just so many different things that come up in life and business and all these things where adapting is so important, and like being able to be present in a certain way where you can kind of zoom out on the problem and figure out solutions where it's like we'll make it happen. Something's gonna happen, but we're gonna figure it out and we're gonna make it better. We're gonna make things more efficient. And I mean, with Strap, like you guys have grown so much in just a short amount of time. Like it's insane how much. Like I mean, Casey used to live with me, so we would always have conversations about, how things were going and where things were going, and we would have really, heavy, deep conversations about like innovations and kind of paths that you guys wanted to take, and now these things are coming to life, and these things that we were talking about in the past have become a reality, and that's part of it where it's like identifying the problems, figuring out solutions, and also obviously bringing people onto the team that can help break down those solutions like Zach,
Yep.
shout out Z Finky.
Yeah, dude. The
But
best.
so it's just like building that all-star squad to be able to like feed off of each other, but also be able to grow towards the same goal, I think is so important. I'm glad that you guys have found that connection because I mean, like you said, it's so genuine that even if Strap were to end tomorrow, I absolutely see you guys not only being friends, but starting more companies and,
Yeah,
having more business endeavors together on the side, whatever that looks like. So no, it's beautiful that you guys were able to find that niche. Um, I do want to talk about, we're talking about business and owning business and running stuff, and we tapped on it slightly, but family, very important to you,
yeah.
and it's something that I see your kids. You have such a beautiful family. I
Thank
I
you.
love seeing you guys travel, and you showing them experiences early, and taking film photos of them on Strap, and these are memories that you're creating for 10 years down the line. You're gonna look back and be like, I'm so glad that I was there with my family.
For sure.
And I want to talk about how you find um, the balance with all the projects you have and then making sure you spend time with your wife and kids.
The balance is the balance is hard. Always has been for me. I've been worst habit ever. When you are a tour manager, you are conditioned to check your phone every single minute. Gotta check for an email, gotta check for text, gotta see. And it doesn't matter what stage you're in of a show, right? Whether you're advancing the show still, well, then you're in emails and you're just going to town and you're texting and you're getting things right. And then during the show or before the leading up to the show, you're making sure guests are okay. You're making sure the artist is ready. He knows when he's going to go on. Are there any issues, problems, delays? You're having your pre-show meeting. Have you briefed security? And then you go into the show and it's a constant communication. So you're always on this phone, always on the device, always checking to make sure everything's good, everyone's happy, everything's going as planned. Well, I've brought that with me in, like, that's been me even before touring. I've always been that guy. I've always been on the phone all the time. I've always been talking to a million people at once. Um, and it's definitely my worst habit. And it's really hard to this day for me to get to set it down, right? And I've tried to be mindful of it and I try to do it as much as I can, but maintaining the balance is very, very hard. Luckily, My wife understands that about me, that I take on way more, that I bite off more than I could chew all the time often. Um, but it's definitely getting, I think it's getting better. You know, we have an interesting setup. She owns a salon. She works 2 days a week, Saturday and Sunday. That's her adult time, that's her creative time. That's when she gets to be creative and have good adult conversations. So I have the kids on Saturday, Sunday. But then she takes the kids Monday through Friday, where I'm 99% happy dad, right? I'm trying to grow and really blow this brand up. And I'll be gone from anywhere from like 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. So where she gets her kid time, I get my kid time. We often lack time for one another. So that's the hardest, you know. And we've got older boys, you know, so we've got 6 and 8, and then we've got 16 and 17. So the older boys aren't going to bed at 7:30, 8. They're going to bed at midnight. So after those young kids get down, you would think my wife and I could have some time, but we also have these older boys to tend to, right? Who also need our attention and who also want to have conversations um and uh and just want to talk. So it's, you know, it's like, is it Wednesdays we have coffee, you know, or matcha. We go on and get matcha, like, and then trips like that. Trips are where we probably connect the best, right? That's where
One-on-one time.
And no, like not even, we bring the kids.
Okay.
But when we're out, like, and doing that, whether I'm out for a work trip or not, like that's when she and I can connect the best. Because our lives are so crazy. So I can't say that we've nailed the balance part of things. But it's something we're aware of and something that we are just continuing to work on and try to figure out the best way to make it happen. And, you know, I do think that she's kind of at the end of her salon career. You know, it's been really fun while it lasted, and she's really, really, really good at it. But, you know, I do think eventually we'll be able to free up that time. Um, and that, I mean, hopefully that'll open up more opportunities for us to spend more time together. But man, is that a crackle? Got him.
So the mic's cut out here because the computer died because my dumb ass forgot to plug in the computer before we started. So sorry to cut you off, but
No,
we were
no
talking
sweat.
about balance with family and, you
Yeah.
know, with your wife specifically, and how that's, you know, it's an important part, but it's something that you've almost had to build that time into your schedule because you're so busy. So that's interesting that when you get to a certain point where you are juggling so many different things, where you need to schedule in the time to be able to have that time with your family and your wife and your kids. Otherwise, it just gets lost in the sauce,
Yeah.
for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, you know?
Because I mean, I could keep going. I could keep working.
It's in your nature. I mean, you did it for so long that it's just like like you said, you were kind of trained to like always be on
For sure.
in that sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And it's, you know, I need to, you know, it's something that I've been disconnecting to reconnect is my goal, right? That's like, I just turned 45, right? I'm writing down some goals, and that's something that I really want to focus on, is put the phone away, you know? The problem is, you know, like our current CEO of Happy Dad, he doesn't shut down.
Yeah.
So I could have he'll hit me up at 10 p.m., 12 midnight, 2 a.m. Got an idea, got this, got that. And, you know, you have this concern that you're going to miss something important, but it's so much bigger than that. Like, if there's something he really needs, right? he'll figure it out. He's a smart dude, and I'm not the only one with the answer. So I need to stop worrying about stuff like that and just get home. If it's 7, turn the phone off.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Turn it off.
Do not disturb.
And yeah, do not disturb, and just set it aside. And I know there's like that. I don't know the name of the box that you can set your phone in.
Oh, right.
I can't remember the name of it, but you know, something like that. Not that I need that. I need to set it. I just need to do it and get in that habit, because I'm good with habits. You know, leaving touring and getting into a routine. Wow, that was awesome. Like, it's something I'd never had.
Yeah.
You know, I traveled and was so spontaneous for so long. I never had a routine. I didn't have anything in the mornings, right? There was Vice actually challenged me to run a mile a day. And I ran, it was 22 days, I think. He was like, it's 22 days to create a habit. Run 22 miles in 22 days with me. And he put this out on his socials, right? So I text him, like, I'm going to do this with you. I hate running. I do not like running at all. Not one bit. There's not one single drop of me that likes to run. So I did it, right? Ran a mile, did that for 22 days. Well, you've already done 22. Why stop? You know? So I ran and ran and ran. And I think I was at day 1200. And I didn't miss a run for 1200 plus days.
That's like 4 years.
Yeah. I think we started this in 2019.
Are you still going today?
No.
Oh
I missed the day. And it was the most devastating thing ever. And I missed it on accident. I was traveling back from Chicago.
No. One of those days.
Just forgot, right? Landed.
Yeah, totally.
We had people over.
Yeah.
And
you did a mile in the airport.
I've never, but Vice has. He's done miles in the airport. Well, I probably walked a mile.
Yeah, I was going to say, you walked a mile in the airport.
And you have that conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you missed a day.
Yeah.
Just run 2 today and call it good. But like, you got to be honest with yourself like that.
Like, I missed a day.
I missed a day.
Right.
And I didn't realize until the next day when I went on and put my running shoes on, and I was like, oh, I forgot to run yesterday. And I think Vice is on, like, he's coming up on day 2000.
Whoa. So, I mean, I'm glad that you brought that up, because there's a couple things that I want to tap into before we let you go. I know you got some other things going on today, but what you said earlier was something that I want to dive into a little bit, disconnecting to reconnect.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is very important. And it's like being able to kind of zoom out and, like we were saying earlier, kind of be present and take tasks one thing at a time. And yeah. But also routine, and like the importance of building that routine and having that routine to be able to keep you on your toes, so you can have the time to disconnect, to be able to reconnect and kind of zoom back. So I really, really like that you said that, and kind of going into the mile a day thing.
Yeah,
that's kind of like a discipline thing. Do you find that it helped you get more clarity, and did you almost use that as like some form of like meditation in a way? And
yeah. It felt like that. It did. And the reason I stopped is because the fact that you're starting at 1, just hurt so
devastating,
bad.
Yeah.
I think I will start running again
when it's not 115 degrees.
Well, that's the thing though. You run in 115 degrees. I ran with COVID. I ran with the stomach flu.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's been fucking
like you don't miss a day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you run no matter the conditions. I've run in the rain. Like you run in things you'd never typically run in, right? I've seen Vice do a mile in the airport, because that's how you keep the streak alive, if that's the only time you have. So it was like a meditation for me. I always did it early. I'd wake up really early, 4:35 a.m., go run the mile. And you've accomplished something. Like,
totally.
You've already started your day with something under your belt.
It's a win.
Because for me, I don't want to run after I eat.
Totally.
I don't even want to drink anything. I just want to go and run. get it over with,
In
come
like a
home,
fasted
shower.
state.
Yeah, basically. Because I found if I wait till after lunch or after dinner, like it's just so hard to get the motivation to go out and run, even though it's just a mile. And I'll tell you what, the mile never got easier.
I'm sure.
It's just, you would think you're running a mile every day for over 1,000 days. It's got to get easier. It doesn't. It's like just as hard every single time. And some people will laugh at that because a mile is not hard for some people, but when you don't love it and you don't, and I guess I wasn't giving myself a chance to get into that like runner's high, but it just wasn't, it just never got easier, you know? So yeah, waking up to do something that you don't love is not exciting, but after the fact, you're like, wow. And I would use that time, you know, I was running 7-minute miles, right? Something like that.
Great time.
I pushed myself to do a 6-minute mile.
Yeah, that's tough.
I hit 6 once.
That's super tough.
But I found this podcast, and I think the podcast was 7 minutes long every morning.
That works.
So I would just listen to that for my run, and it's like, and at the time it's fashion and sports and NFTs and stuff that I was really interested in. So I would just listen to that, and it was because there's something about starting a podcast, listening for 7 minutes, then having to turn it off, then going back. You know what I mean? So it was perfect
to consume the whole content in your run. And it's almost like a timer too. It's just like, oh shoot, there's only a minute left of the episode. Let me get home. Yeah. That's cool.
So that just worked out. It was awesome. But it does definitely feel like, I guess, a meditation in a way, you know, and I do try to hit some meditation. I'm in the infrared sauna every morning for 20 minutes.
Oh wow.
Take a cold shower every morning, weather permitting. Like right now, it's cold for 5 seconds and then it gets warm just because it's so hot, right? Totally. So, but in the winter, like it's cold the whole time, you know? So I try to create that routine and use those times to to have structure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, you know, and that's something that just needs to be routine. I get home, phone goes off, and I put it away until this time when I can prepare for my next day for this much time. You know, it's something that I just need to be disciplined about doing.
Yeah, and having those systems in place allows you to be able to be efficient and be able to handle multiple tasks at one time.
Yes.
And you know, to kind of wrap up here, man, I do want to tap in on the opportunity that I feel like has just come out of nowhere. Seems like Happy Dad.
Yeah.
So Happy Dad, obviously, if you don't know what Happy Dad is, it's a hard seltzer by the Nelk Boys, the Full Send crew. So they started this seltzer. What was it, like almost 2 years now?
I think they started it during COVID.
Okay, so
but it's 2 years old. But I think that's when the ideation started. Yeah,
but they released it when it was like NFT days and all that crazy.
It's been exactly 2 years, like a month ago, something like that.
Yeah, so it's right around that time, and it's blown up so much.
It has,
absolutely. Like Happy Dad is everywhere. I mean, Full Send group guys, like they blew up in the past, you know, 3 years, even more so than they already were. And I think it's due to Happy Dad. To some extent, of course, but kind of talk about like how did you meet like the owners, or like how did you get connected with the Happy Dad crew? So
Sam and John are the CEO and president.
They're brothers, right?
They're brothers. Sam and John Shahidi. I met them in 2009. They were developing apps at the time for celebrities. They did Mike Tyson's app. I think they did an app for like Ocho Cinco. Like that was the time when you were going through the app store looking for apps that I'll buy this one for 99 cents, right? You were paying for the app. And they were finding ways to gamify and monetize for whoever, Mike Tyson or whatever that was. So that's when I met them. I was touring with Vice.
Oh, wow.
And then we just stayed in touch. We've always stayed in touch. We've always helped each other out. You know, they need this or need to know somebody in this area, or I need that, you know, like we've always stayed in touch, taking care of each other. Great guys. and very smart guys. And I've watched them kind of, they've always adapted to what was like cool at the time.
Yeah.
They've always had their foot in whatever's trending at the time. You know, they're
Yeah.
very good at navigating that. They did some stuff with a bunch of big viners. They started I think they had an app of their own.
And that's why they connected with the Nelk Boys.
The Nelk Boys connection came much later, I think. And I think they were, and I don't know that this story, I'm pretty sure the story's true, but I think they were just at dinner, right? With Kyle.
Okay.
And Kyle's one of the Nelk Boys. Well,
The main guy.
yeah, he's the main guy. And I think he was struggling to run the business, operate the business, make content, do all these things.
He was wearing a lot of hats,
right?
Yeah.
So
it was a pretty small crew too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Fairly small, and I don't know how they ended up coming to terms with, hey, we'll come in and help you, but Sam and John are the guys. Like if you're going to put two guys on this project, there's not two better guys that could have crossed paths with Kyle.
Yeah.
So they came in and basically have taken over Nelk full send. So Kyle can do what he does best, right? Make the content and
Be the face, yeah.
And be the face. And Kyle's awesome. He's super smart.
Seems like a cool dude.
Yeah, it just really, just not afraid to do anything really, you know. So it was just a really good match of people. Well, then they end up starting Happy Dad together. So Steve will do it. Kyle,
Yep.
Sam and John started it, funded it. It's a fully independent company. Launched it. And how I got involved was this was after Kaskade, but Kaskade had me working on producing an event for him in Southern California somewhere. It was Orange County somewhere, I think. So I was out producing this show for him. I had put up a picture of the stage. Sammy DM'd me, hey, I want to bring some friends to the show. I'm like 100%. And I said, where are you? I'll bring tickets. And he dropped me an address. And just to go back a little ways, I didn't know who the Nelk Boys were until my son was, I think he was 11. He's like, yo, you got to see this video.
Yeah. Right.
And I watched this video and I'm like, this is what we're watching?
This is what the kids are doing these days?
This is what we're watching? I could only connect, like it felt kind of like the Jackass of my day.
Totally. That's kind of what it was.
So I got it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, man, I don't know if I love that this is what we're watching, but
yeah,
cool, whatever, right?
New generation.
So that was my introduction to Nelk. And so Sammy drops me a pin. I pull up and walk in. It's the Full Send headquarters.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know that Sam and John were there. I had no idea. So I walked in and I was just like, tell me, like, what is it? Tell me about it. Tell me about all these things and what are you doing for them and what's going on. So he took me on a tour. I FaceTimed the boys and they're like, what are you doing there? So they're freaking out. But
that's amazing.
That's when I think Sammy kind of put two and two together that I was Arizona.
Right.
Tapped in nightlife, right? And they're launching Arizona. I mean, this was probably like November 2021. And yeah, something like that. Or 2020. I don't remember. 2021. And he's like, we're launching in February. Come out, meet everybody. And if you're interested and you want to run the brand for the state, let's talk about that.
Wow.
So
big time.
Yeah. So that's how that all happened. And we ended up, they came out, they launched, met everybody. Super, super good time. Like cool to see how they cool to see how they move and the madness that is their fans. And
cult following.
And you know, you don't have any idea until you put on a Happy Dad hat and walk around. And it's just, you'll have so many unexpected interactions with people of all ages.
Absolutely.
All genders. Oh my gosh, I love Nelk. Oh my gosh, I love the podcast. I love Happy Dad. I love this. I love that. And something that I can truly say is every one of those interactions is always positive. There's never, oh man, those guys are whatever. Those guys are this or that. Like, it's always positive. And I didn't understand that they had built something so strong until I left my initial training at the office in June of 2021. And when I say training, it was like, it was a free for all. Like, I think I was number 7 or 8 in the company. These guys are running this thing with like 5 people in 16 states.
Yeah.
And just like making it happen. So I think, you know, me and the national director of sales, his name is Joe, we got kind of hired at kind of the same time-ish. I think I was a week after him. So I came in to train, but they're like, we're just going to figure this thing out, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of what we expect from you. But I go home with some gear and I had a hat on, and just the minute I walk in the airport, people are pointing fingers, mentioning the brand, talking about the brand. And that's when I realized, like, this is a rocket ship. Like, this thing is going places. It's the right people. It's the right time. And just watching them. And I tell people this all the time. Like, I don't think that I would have, if High Noon would have come to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a sales guy?" No, I would have hard no. Like, I'm not a salesperson. I told that Sammy in the beginning. But this isn't selling, right? This is like brand building on a level that I want to participate in.
Yeah.
Like, there's no Anheuser-Busch saying, here's the budget, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. It's literally any idea plays. You run the ideas, you know, here's an idea. Holy smokes, let's do it. They're on board with that type of thinking and that type of innovation and that type of experimentation, which makes it just so much fun, right?
Yeah.
It's so much fun. The way people respond to the brand is amazing. You know, look at it a year ago. I've been with them a little bit over a year now. A year ago, talking to people about the brand, don't know really, what is that? Tell me about it. Now, people know what the brand is.
For
and
sure.
you can see it, you can feel it. You know, like, the building is working now. We're in 22 states. Now we've got 70 employees. So to see that happening and to be a part of all that has been absolutely insane and fun. And I you know, I learn every day, and I get to talk to awesome people about an awesome product. And it's just thinking outside of the box every single day, which I love.
For
right?
sure.
Like, you get to be as creative as you want to be. So it's been really fun and exciting to be a part of it, for sure. And it's always there's always something up the sleeve. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a surprise around the corner.
It's adapting, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, but it's just Sammy. Like, Sammy will come up with these crazy ideas, execute them, and the next thing you know, it's like Death Row is on a can. Like, what? How? You know, like, there's those types of things that are happening behind the scenes all the time. I mean, the guests on the podcast are massive. You know,
Insane.
The views are massive,
for sure.
And Happy Dad's all a part of that. You know,
Yeah.
And Pivot Podcast, another one that's huge. huge in the sports industry, and it's fully, you see Happy Dad there. They drink it all day long. They've got merch collabs, like they wear it. So it's getting to this point where you're seeing it, right? Grocery, convenience store, independent liquor store. Now you're seeing it in nightclubs. You're seeing it at restaurants. You're seeing it at bars. You're seeing it everywhere you go.
It's everywhere.
You're seeing the merch. You're seeing, on socials.
Yeah, the brand recognition is heavy now.
So it's just a constant growth. The team is insane. The team is amazing, top to bottom. Like, the most incredible people. They're very good at hiring, finding the right people that just know what they're doing and are happy to be doing what they're doing. And that's really exciting.
Yeah. It's cool that you found yourself in a position like that, because it's like, it seems like, I mean, throughout this conversation, it's like there's a lot of parallels and things that you ended up doing. And I think this is right in line with, your loves and your love for the creation of ideas, and, the ability to kind of see things through and throw spaghetti at the wall, but on this level. This is something where you kind of, you've attached yourself to a rocket ship. And I think that's something so important, that you're able to find your way in a full-time position where you feel passion, and, your relationship with Sammy and John, that was able to cultivate this genuine want to work with them, versus, like you said, if you were to get approached by High Noon or White Claw, it wouldn't have been the same, because that connection wouldn't have been there, wouldn't have been genuine.
Yeah, just not. I don't have interest in that, right?
Yeah.
I have interest in startups. I love startups.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. Just on, like,
it's a massive startup, like a massive startup. And, and you get these big brands playing, right, writing checks. You get these big brands out there that are, they've got these massive budgets, and we come into the space and we're like, hey, you've got these 9 venues. Let's do something fun with Happy Dad.
Yeah.
And you break the news that you're not writing them a check, and they don't get it at first, but then you start to show them the power of the brand, and they are automatically like, oh, okay, I get it now. Let's do this. You know what I mean? So it's a totally different situation than just working for one of the behemoths,
for sure.
It's an independent company still, so it's fun to ride the wave, for sure.
I'm so happy for you that you've been able to, find the balance and find a place where you have the ability to do what you love, make good money, make a living, provide for your family, but then also be able to disconnect and spend time with your family. So you're living the dream, in a way, where it's just like, everyone's dream is different. But I think, from what I know about you and from what I've learned about you from this conversation, it's been so great. And I feel like you've always lived that life and very value-based. So I'm glad to see you in a position where you're thriving.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. And I don't want to take a gig that I don't love,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, I don't know. I don't ever want to be in that position where I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this is what pays my bills, but I don't love it. So I'm just going to stay here? No. Why would I do that to myself?
Exactly.
So I feel very lucky to be in the position that I'm in, and with the people that I'm working with, especially. Like, it's been a great ride, and I'm excited to, like, every day I'm excited for what we can do,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, and to kind of wrap up here, we're gonna bring attention to what you got going on. Follow Strap Photo Club. Everybody go follow Matt at Matt Miera on Instagram, at Strap Photo Club on Instagram as well, strapphotoclub.com. Obviously follow Happy Dad
Yes.
at Happy Dad on Instagram. Shout him out. You know, if you get a can, tag him in it. You know what I'm saying?
Please.
Yeah, just support this man. I mean, he's obviously very genuine, as you can see from this conversation. This has been so enlightening, man. Thank you so much for coming on and, you know, spending this time with me and taking time out of your day, man. It really means a lot, bro.
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
I'm so proud of you, dude. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And to anybody listening, you know, fellow Martians, go like, subscribe, comment what your favorite part on this video was. Again, go follow Matt, follow me at OnMarsPod, at HarryMars_, and we will see you next time on Mars.
Subscribe, baby.
Love you guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this episode of the On Mars Pod and for sticking around to the end, man. I really appreciate you guys. You are the real Martians. Like this video, comment below what your favorite part was, what was most inspiring to you. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications here on future interviews coming out soon, and also follow us on Instagram at On Mars Pod. Love you guys so much. We will see you next time on Mars. Yeah. Let's go. Appreciate it, bro.
The clock's down.
Yeah, it shuts off after 90. I was like, dude, went so long we stopped.
We did it.
Yeah, dude.